Picture yourself in a medieval court, the air thick with the scent of roasted boar and stale mead, the flicker of torchlight casting shadows on stone walls. You're not a knight, not a lord, not even a servant scrubbing pots. You're the court jester, the fool, the one everyone's staring at expecting a laugh. Sounds like a riot, doesn't it? A life of floppy hats, jingling bells and cracking jokes for a room full of nobles. But here's the kicker. One bad pun, one off-colour quip, and you're not just out of a job, you're in the dungeon or worse, measuring your neck for a noose. Welcome to the tightrope walk of medieval entertainment, where your wit is your only shield, and it's about as sturdy as a soggy loaf of bread. Before you settle into this tale dim, the lights maybe crack a window for that cool night breeze. If you're enjoying this, hit that like button, subscribe and drop a comment. Where are you tuning in from and what's the clock saying? It's wild to think of folks across the globe drifting off to these stories. Now let's ease into this. Being a jester wasn't a career you picked like signing up to be a blacksmith or a baker. It was a trap you stumbled into, a role that clung to you like mud on your boots. You didn't wake up one morning thinking I'd love to juggle turnips for a king who might have me flogged for sneezing. No, this life chose you. And it wasn't because you were born with a silver spoon or a knack for poetry. It was because you were different. Maybe your laugh was too loud, your limp too noticeable, or your tongue too sharp for your own good. Whatever it was, someone powerful pointed at you and said, "That one. He's funny." And just like that, your fate was sealed, bells and all. The court jester's life was a paradox. You were the star of the show, the one who could make a door queen chuckle or a grumpy duke forget his gout for a moment. But you were also the lowest rung on the ladder a human bauble dragged out to sparkle on command. Your job was to keep the court smiling, to fill the silences between political schemes and royal tantrums with laughter. Sounds simple, right? Except every joke was a gamble. Mock the wrong lord, misjudge the king's mood, and you'd hear the clang of a cell door faster than you could say badumts. You lived in a world where a chuckle could earn you a crust of bread, but a frown could cost you everything. And yet you kept going, because what else could you do? The bells on your hat jingled with every step, a constant reminder. You're not here to be you. You're here to be the fool. This wasn't Hollywood's version of medieval life, all shining armour and gallant quests. Forget the fairy tales. The court was a snake pit of egos, and you were the one dancing through it, trying not to get bitten. You'd hear the nobles' laughter, sharp and cruel, as you spun a tale or tripped over your own oversized shoes for effect. You'd smell the wax of candles burning low, feel the itch of your garish tunic red, yellow, green, sewn together like a drunk tailor's fever dream. And through it all you'd smile, because that's what fools do. You'd smile even as your knees creaked like a rusty gate, even as your heart sank at the thought of another night performing for people who'd rather see you fail. The bells kept jingling, the court kept watching, and you kept dancing on that razor's edge one joke at a time. So how does one end up as the court's designated laugh machine, you ask? Not by sending in a resume or acing an audition, that's for sure. Being a medieval court jester wasn't something you trained for, like learning to shoe horses or brew ale. It was more like catching a disease sudden, unwanted, and impossible to shake. You didn't choose the bells. The bells chose you usually because someone with a castle and a temper decided you were too odd, too witty, or too unlucky to be anything else. Picture yourself trudging through a muddy village, maybe a peasant with a knack for making your mates laugh at the tavern. One day you slip in the muck during a festival and a passing noble roars with laughter. Next thing you know, you're not heading home to your straw bed. You're being hauled to the castle, handed a hat that jingles like a cursed wind chime, and told congratulations, you're funny. Now be funny forever. It could happen in a heartbeat. Maybe you had a quirk, a squeaky voice, a crooked back, or a face that made kids giggle. Maybe you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time, like when you accidentally mocked a pompous baron at a feast thinking no one was listening. The noble's laugh sealed your fate. By morning you're not a farmer anymore. You're the court's new mascot, expected to entertain lords who think boredom is a capital offence. Some jesters were even bought like a shiny trinket at a market. A lord might spot you in a rival's court, all witty and weird-looking, and decide, I want that one. You'd be gifted or traded, wrapped in sarcasm, and shipped off like a particularly chatty parrot. No say, no choice, just a new master and the same old bells. The selection process was as brutal as it was random. You weren't picked for ambition or skill, but for something that made you stand out, usually in a way that screamed not normal. Short, funny, limp hilarious, clever enough to make a duke snort wine through his nose. You're hired. But here's the rub: once chosen, your life wasn't yours anymore. You were the court's property, a living toy to be trotted out for feasts meetings, or whenever a diplomat needed a chuckle. You couldn't say, "Nah, I'm good. I'll stick to ploughing fields." Refuse and you'd be branded a vagrant tossed in the stocks. Or worse, left to starve in a world where a man without a role was just a problem waiting to be solved. The bells weren't just decoration. They were a chain tying you to a life of forced smiles and constant scrutiny. And so you'd step into the great hall, the air heavy with the stench of sweat and spilled wine, your heart pounding like a war drum. You'd feel the weight of every stare, hear the clink of goblets pause as the court waited for your next trick. You'd juggle jest, maybe take a pratfall to keep them laughing, all while knowing one thing: you didn't choose this. You were chosen, plucked from your life like a weed, and replanted in a garden of thorns. The bells jingled with every move, a mocking reminder of your new reality. And as you dance for the nobles, you'd wonder how a single laugh, a single moment could rewrite your entire existence. But that's the medieval court for you, a place where a joke could make you, and a misstep could break you. Imagine stepping into the great hall, the air buzzing with the clatter of goblets and the low hum of noble gossip. You're the court jester, and every eye is on you, waiting for a spark of wit to light up their dreary evening. You'd think you could clock in, toss a few quips, maybe juggle some apples and call it a night. But no, being a jester isn't a job you leave at the door. It's a performance that never ends, a spotlight that never dims. You're not just entertaining when the king snaps his fingers. You're on stage every second, even when you're just trying to sneak a sip of watered-down ale. One wrong move, one moment of being too dull, and the court's ready to trade you for a new fool faster than you can say jingle bells. You weave through the hall, your garish tunic scratching like a sack of regrets, the bells on your hat chiming with every step. The nobles don't just want a show during the feast, they expect you to be a walking spectacle. Pass the queen's table, and you better wink or do a little ironic bow, or someone's whispering, "Why's the fool so glum?" Try to grab a moment's peace in a corner and a lord's already barking. Do something funny. You're not allowed to blend into the tapestries. You're the court's living oddity, a human firecracker meant to pop on command. The air smells of wax and sweat. The torches flicker like they're mocking your exhaustion, and yet you keep moving. Keep smiling, because silence is your enemy. Silence means you're not doing your job, and in the snake pit of the court, that's a one-way ticket to the stocks. It's not just about keeping them laughing, it's about never letting them see you as anything but the fool. Show a flicker of sadness and the room gets uneasy, like you've broken some unspoken rule. Anger. That's a death wish. A quiet thought. Suspicious, like you're plotting to steal the crown instead of just dreaming of a nap. You're expected to prance, jest, and toss clever insults at some hapless courtier, all while your knees creak like an old cart and your heart's begging for a break. The bells jingle, a constant reminder that you're not a person here, you're a performance. Even when you're not summoned, you're watched. The servants eye you warily, the nobles nudge each other when you pass waiting for a free show. You're the court's emotional jukebox, and they've got unlimited coins. The worst part? You're not one of them, and you never will be. You eat with the nobles, sure, but you're not at their table, you're orbiting it, dodging their barbs and their boredom. You sleep under the same roof, but it's not a home, it's a stage, and you're the act that can't afford to flop. So you keep going, spinning tales of knights and dragons with a sarcastic twist, maybe tripping over your own bells for a cheap laugh. You feel the weight of their stares, hear the clink of their goblets, pause as they wait for your next line. The court's a maze of egos, and you're the one dancing through it, one jest at a time, knowing that the moment you stop the bells go quiet, and so does your future. You've just finished a night of jesting your throat raw from spinning bawdy tales, and your legs aching from a pratfall that got the king chuckling. The feast is over, the nobles stumbling off to their velvet-draped beds. You the jester don't get to collapse into luxury. Your quarters await, if you can call them that, a cramped nook near the kitchen smelling of grease and yesterday's stew, or maybe a closet once used for brooms, barely big enough for a straw pallet. The bells on your hat dangle silent now, but they're still there, mocking you as you try to snatch a few hours of sleep. You're in the castle, sure close enough to hear the laughter from the great hall, but you're as far from belonging as a stray dog sniffing at the gates. Your room's a far cry from the nobles' chambers with their furs and fireplaces. You get a draughty corner, a thin blanket, and the constant clatter of servants bustling nearby. The walls are cold stone, damp enough to make your bones ache, and the air carries the faint tang of mildew. You eat, but it's whatever's left after the lord's priests and even the stable boy have had their fill crusts of bread, maybe a scrap of fatty meat if you're lucky. Your clothes. The same garish tunic you performed in itchy wool that chafes your skin patched together like a jester's dignity. No one's handing you silk or fur. You're dressed to be laughed at, not warmed. The bells, those cursed bells, sit on a hook by your bed, glinting in the dark like they're plotting your next humiliation. You're surrounded by people, yet you're alone. The nobles don't befriend you. They pat you on the head like a trained monkey, tossing you a smile when you amuse them, a scowl when you don't. The servants keep their distance, wary of your closeness to the court, like you're a spy in a fool's costume. You're too high for their world, too low for the nobles. You drift through the castle, a jingly ghost tolerated but never trusted. You hear everything, though. Whispers of affairs, plots hissed over goblets, the truth behind a lord's forced smile. You're the court's unwanted ear, catching secrets because no one thinks you matter. But that knowledge is a double-edged sword. Speak it, and you're a traitor. Keep it, and you're complicit. Either way, you're stranded a man with bells but no place to call home. At night, lying on your lumpy pallet, you hear the distant echo of laughter from the hall. A reminder of your role. You're the fool the court's living joke there to make them forget their scheming for a moment. But who's there for you? No one. You close your eyes. The bell's silent for now, but their weight lingers a chain tying you to this life. Tomorrow you'll be back in the hall, dodging chicken bones and noble egos your smile as forced as your jests. The court's a snake pit, and you're the one dancing through it one lonely step at a time with only the jingle of bells to keep you company. You're standing in the great hall, the air heavy with the reek of spilled wine and roasted game, your bells jingling like a taunt with every nervous twitch. You're the jester, and the court's eyes are on you, hungry for a laugh, like wolves circling a limping deer. Being funny isn't just your job, it's your survival, and the pressure's tighter than the itchy wool tunic chafing your ribs. The king's had a rotten day, maybe his hunt failed, or the queen's sulking over a snub. Doesn't matter. You're expected to swoop in, juggle a few quips, maybe trip over your own bells for a chuckle and turn their frowns upside down. No breaks, no sick days, no sorry. My dog died, I'm not feeling it. You're a one-man comedy machine, and if the gears grind to a halt, you're not just out of a gig, you're out of a life. Picture it. The duke's buried his third wife, the kingdom's at war, and your tooth's throbbing like a blacksmith's hammer. Too bad. The court doesn't care. You've got to spin a pun, do a little dance, or impersonate a pompous bishop, all while your head's screaming for a nap. Reuse a joke, might as well toss yourself in the moat. These nobles want fresh wit and new satire by lunch, and if you're lucky, they'll only pelt you with bread crust when you bomb. Fail to amuse the wrong lord on the wrong day, and you're not getting a bad review, you're dodging chicken bones, a slap or worse, a one-way trip to the dungeon. The hall's a snake pit, and you're dancing through it, your smile as forced as the clinking goblets around you. You're not allowed to be human here. Cry and they'll call you weak. Scowl and they'll whisper treason. Your job is to be a walking laugh track no matter how much your heart's creaking like an old gate. The torches flicker, casting shadows that mock your exhaustion, and the nobles lean in waiting for your next line. You toss out a quip about the baron's new hat, praying it lands. The bells jingle, a cruel reminder you're not here to feel. You're here to perform, to keep the court's egos fed with laughter, or risk becoming the punchline yourself. You're the jester, teetering on a tightrope in the medieval court, your bells chiming like a warning with every step. Your job mock the mighty kings, queens, clergy without getting your head lopped off. It's a game of wit sharper than any sword, where one wrong quip could turn you from fool to felon. The hall smells of wax and intrigue, the nobles' eyes glinting as you toss out a jest about the lord's latest mistress. They laugh, but you feel the air shift like a storm brewing behind their smiles. The line between funny and fatal is thinner than your threadbare tunic, and it moves with the mood of the room. One day the queen giggles at your jab about her cousin's gambling, the next it's treason because he's standing there red-faced and vengeful. You've got to be clever, but not too clever. A direct insult. Suicide. A jab at the king's expanding waistline. You'd better wrap it in 3 layers of metaphor and a juggling act to soften the blow. You learn to speak in riddles to cloak truth in absurdity. The rooster with no eggs crows loudest, you say, eyeing the pompous duke, hoping the king chuckles instead of reaching for his guards. Every joke's a gamble, the torches flickering like they're betting on your fate. Mock politics and you're dancing with danger. Poke fun at the church blasphemies, a bad career move. Even a safe jest can sour if the wrong noble's in a foul mood. The court's a snake pit, and you're juggling vipers, your bells ringing out like a countdown to doom. Yet this is your strange power. You can say what others can't, slipping truths past the court's defences with a smirk and a jingle. The nobles laugh, pretending it's just a joke, but they squirm, knowing you see through their masks. You're the court's jester, its conscience in a coxcomb hat, but that privilege comes with a noose. One misstep, one truth too sharp, and the laughter stops. The goblets clink, the hall falls silent, and you feel the weight of every stare. You smile, toss another quip, and pray it lands soft. The bells keep jingling, tying you to this deadly dance where wit is your weapon, and timing is your only shield. You step into the great hall, and before you utter a single jest, the room's already snickering. Why your wardrobe a walking insult stitched together to scream "I'm not a person, I'm a punchline"? As the court jester, your outfit isn't built for dignity. It's crafted to humiliate a garish cage you wear every day. The coxcomb hat flops atop your head, a horned monstrosity and clashing red and yellow bells dangling from the tips like tiny tattletales jingling with every move. You can't even scratch your nose without announcing it to the court. The air smells of mead and mockery, and your tunic blue-green-red, sewn like a drunk tailor's nightmare, itches like a penance. Its wool cheap and heavy-stained with last week's gravy, because who cares if the fool's comfortable? Your shoes, curled toe slippers, also bell-laden, perfect for tripping on spilled ale, or your own dwindling self-respect. They make you look like a court-sanctioned goblin, which, let's be honest, is the point. Your belt's a joke, too knotted in a way that defies function. No pouches, no knife, just more fabric to tangle your legs during a pratfall. While nobles strut in velvet and silk gold, thread glinting like their egos, you're dressed in scraps, a human patchwork quilt meant to remind everyone you're beneath them. The torches cast your shadow, a ridiculous silhouette that dances on the walls, mocking you as much as the nobles do. Nice hat, they never say. Instead, it's, "Don't trip on your bells, fool," or a tug on your sleeve to hear you jingle like a discarded toy. You wear this every day, feasts, weddings, tents, treaty, talks, no wardrobe change, no reprieve. Even when you're dead serious begging the king for mercy or dodging a flying chicken bone, you look like a colouring book exploded. The bells chime a cruel chorus tying you to your role. You feel the court's eyes, hear their chuckles before you even speak. The hall's a snake pit, and your outfit's the bait ensuring you're never a threat, just a jester in a funny hat. Yet you keep moving, jesting, smiling, because what else can you do? The bells jingle on a reminder your clothes aren't just a costume, they're your chains, and the court loves to hear them rattle. You live in the castle, sleep under the same roof as dukes and kings, but don't kid yourself, you're no noble. You're the jester, a piece of furniture that jingles and tells jokes. Your place in the court is a strange nowhere, neither high nor low, like a moth trapped between window panes. The great hall buzzes with laughter and clinking goblets, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat and scheming. You're there, dodging nobles' barbs, but you're not one of them. You stand near their table, close enough to catch a flung crust or an insult, but never invited to sit. You eat their leftovers, maybe a soggy bit of bread after the dogs have had their pick, and you're grateful because starving's worse than swallowing your pride. Your room's a damp nook by the kitchens, a far cry from the lord's fur-lined chambers. You hear everything, though whispers of treason over wine, a lady's giggle that's not for her husband, the truth behind a forced treaty smile. You're the court's unwanted ear, invisible yet always there, catching secrets because no one thinks a fool matters. But that's a dangerous gift. Speak those truths, and you're a traitor. Hold them, and you're a target. The nobles won't befriend you. They pat your head like a performing dog, amused but never equal. The servants, they eye you like you're a spy in bells, too close to power to trust. You're too high for their world, too low for the court's a jingly outcast floating in between. You drift through the hall, your bells chiming like a warning, the torches flickering as if they pity you. You mock a lord's bad poetry and the room roars, but no one's clapping for you. They're laughing at the fool who dares. Ask for respect, a favour, anything real, and you're reminded, know your place, fool. You're a resident stranger allowed in grand halls but never welcomed. The court's a snake pit, and you're dancing through it alone with your wit and your secrets. At night you lie on your straw pallet, the bell silent but heavy, tying you to this limbo. You're part of the castle's pulse, but never its heart, a shadow in a world of light, jingling through a life that's never truly yours. You're the jester, standing in the torchlit hall, your bells jingling like a sarcastic applause as you weave a satire sharper than a knight's blade. You've spent years honing your craft, juggling knives, spinning rhymes in two tongues, mimicking the bishop's drawl so perfectly the court howls. You're a poet or bard. You're a genius in a coxcomb hat, but to the nobles, you're just a trick pony good for a chuckle and nothing more. The air's thick with the scent of mead and malice, and and when you drop a verse that skewers a lord's greed, they laugh, sure. But then someone shouts, "Do the silly walk again. Your talent's a diamond buried in dung and the court's too busy snickering to dig for it." You could rival a scholar with your witcraft, a political jab disguised as a sheep pun that'd make a bard weep with envy. But brilliance, that's not what they want. They want you to trip over your bells for a pratfall, not outshine their egos. Sing better than the Duke's minstrel and the room goes quiet like you've stolen their air. Tell a bolder quip than a baron and it's sassy a step too far. You're meant to sparkle, not dazzle, to be clever enough to amuse, but never so wise they feel small. The torches flicker, casting your shadow a twisted fool's outline, while you juggle jest and dim your light to keep their pride intact. The court's a snake pit, and your talent's a sword you can't swing too high. The tragedy's this: you're a master of music, satire, acrobatics, but it's all a party trick to them. A noble's off-key ballad gets applause. Your flawless lute solo gets a grape tossed at your head. You're brilliant, but only if it comes with a jingle and a fall. You play the game dazzled just enough to keep your job, then stumble to remind them you're no threat. The bells chime, tying you to this cruel dance. You feel their stares, hear the clink of goblets, pause for your next act. You smile, toss a quip and swallow the truth your genius is your cage and the court loves you best when you're not too good. So you jest on a hidden maestro in a fool's rags, your talent applauded only with condescension. You're the jester at a medieval feast, the hall aglow with candlelight reeking of roasted boar and noble arrogance. Goblets overflow, minstrels strum, and you're the main event, not a guest, but a toy to poke for laughs. The court's eyes glint as you weave between tables, bells jingling like a mocking chorus. Do a trick fool a lord slurs and you oblige mimicking his lazy eye for a roar of laughter. But it's not joy, it's humiliation. A gauntlet of jeers and taunts you dodge with a forced grin. The air's thick with wine and cruelty, and your tunic itches like a badge of shame as you perform, knowing one misstep could turn the feast into your funeral. You don't sit, you orbit a jingly satellite of disgrace darting from group to group to fill awkward silences with a quip or a clumsy handstand. The nobles don't just want entertainment, they want you to bleed for it. A lady yanks your hat over your eyes, another demands a pig impression, and a knight lobs a chicken bone laughing when you flinch. You're not just a jester. You're a punching bag, a safe target for their egos. They can't insult each other, so they mock your bells, your voice, your existence. The torches flicker, casting your shadow like a broken puppet, and you keep smiling because silence is deadly. Silence shifts the spotlight, and in this snake pit, an unfunny fool is a dead one. You take it all, the grabs, the taunts, the slaps, because the alternative's worse. You're at every feast but never celebrated, consumed like the bread and wine forgotten by the time the table's clear. The nobles feel smarter, richer, safer, laughing at you, their jester, the joke that keeps their world spinning. Your ribs ache, your smiles are bruised, but you jest on dodging their barbs and their boredom. The bells jingle, tying you to this role, a cruel reminder you're here to be laughed at, not loved. As the feast winds down, you slip away to your damp nook, the hall's laughter echoing behind you. The court's fed, but you're empty, dancing through this life with only your wit to keep you from falling. You're the jester flitting through the medieval court like a shadow in bells, your coxcomb hat jingling as you pour wine for lords who barely notice you. The hall reeks of mead and secrets, and you're the invisible ear catching every whisper. Nobles speak freely around you, thinking you're too foolish to matter. Murmurs of affairs, bribes hissed over goblets, treason plotted in the feast's din. You hear it all not because you're nosy, but because knowing keeps you alive. The air's thick with torch smoke and intrigue, and your role's more than jest now. You're the king's spy in a fool's costume, a blade of wit sharper than steel, but just as deadly to wield. The king calls you aside, his voice, low eyes glinting like a hawk's. "Fool," he says, "what did the bishop mutter to the envoy last night? You'd better have an answer, or he'll think you're playing for another side. You deliver maybe in a riddle, cloaking truth in a jingle, but it's a tightrope walk. Tell too much and you're a traitor to someone. Tell too little and you're useless. Servants hush when you pass guards, eye you like you're hiding a dagger behind your pratfalls. They're not wrong. Your weapon's information, and in this snake pit it's deadlier than any sword. The bells chime a mocking reminder every secret you carry is a link in the chain tying you to this dangerous dance. You drift from corner to corner, a jingly ghost catching confessions meant for no one. A lady's lover, a lord's scheme, each word's a coin you can't spend but must hoard. The king wants truth, but only the kind that suits him. and you're expected to serve it with a smirk. The nobles smile at your jests, but their eyes narrow, sensing the fool sees too much. You're the court's most perilous player, disguised as its least threatening piece. The torches flicker, casting your shadow a twisted fool's outline as you jest to cover your tracks. You feel the weight of their stares, the clink of goblets pausing for your next quip. The bells keep ringing, binding you to this role, where every laugh hides a risk and every silence could be your last. You're the jester heart, heavy as the stone walls around you, but the court doesn't care. The feast roars goblets, clinking the air thick with roasted game and noble sneers. Your dog's dead, your fever's burning, or maybe your heart's cracked from a love you'll never speak. Too bad. The queen wants a quip about her cousin's wig, and the duke's glaring because his hunt flopped. You're expected to dance through their moods, bells jingling like a cruel taunt, your smile a mask as tight as your itchy tunic. Show a real feeling, sadness, anger, exhaustion, and the hall bristles like you've spat in their wine. You're not here to be human. You're here to be funny, or you're nothing. Sadness makes them squirm like you've broken the court's unwritten law fools don't feel. Anger. That's a one-way trip to the stocks. Tired. They'll call you lazy, maybe whisper, it's time for a new fool. You absorb their drunken rants, their mocking laughs, even the occasional chicken leg lobbed at your head, and you grin through it all. The torches flicker, casting shadows that mock your grief, but you juggle just turn your pain into a punchline before they can. Your heart's screaming for 5 minutes behind a curtain to cry, but there's no curtain, no mercy. The bells chime, tying you to this role where vulnerability's a luxury you can't afford. The cruelest twist. If they notice you're off, they don't ask what's wrong, they sneer. Why's the fool not funny today, or mutter about replacing you? So you bury your hurt underwit laugh, louder than anyone, make your heart break a pratfall for their amusement. The court's a snake pit, and you're dancing through it alone with your scars. You feel their stares, hear the clink of goblets, pause for your next act. You toss a quip, spin a tale, and pray it lands. The bells keep ringing, a reminder you're the court's jukebox, meant to play their tune, not yours. As the feast fades, you slip to your damp nook, the hall's laughter echoing behind you, and you wonder how long you can keep pretending nothing hurts. You're the jester bells jingling like a nervous heartbeat as you step into the great hall, the air thick with roasted venison and royal tension. The king's in a foul mood. Maybe a diplomat sneezed, or his favourite goblet chipped. Doesn't matter. Every eye swings to you, the fool, like you're the court's personal mood lifter. The torches flicker, casting shadows that seem to scowl, and your tunic itches like a woolen curse. You're not just here to jest. You're the king's emotional crutch, expected to patch his tantrums with a quip or a pratfall, no matter that you're hoarse from last night's feast, or your knees creak like a drawbridge. If his majesty's frowning, you're failing, and in this snake pit failure's a one-way ticket to the stables, or worse. It's not just the king's mood, it's the court's paranoia. A trade deal flops. They mutter you didn't lighten the room enough. The queen glares during mass. Your last joke must have been off. The king stubs his toe. Clearly you left a chamber pot in his path. You're the court's scapegoat, a jingly thermostat tweaking the royal temper. A snide glance, a hissed entertain me fool, and you're scrambling, spinning a tale, juggling apples. Anything to make the king crack a smile. The bells chime, a cruel reminder you're responsible for his joy, but never credited for it. He laughs. The wine gets the praise. He sulks. Your head's on the line. You dance through the hall, dodging noble egos, and flying crusts your smile as forced as the clinking goblets. The king's glare weighs like a crown of thorns, and you toss a quip about his rival's beard, praying it lands. The court's a snake pit, and you're the one wrangling vipers, your wit the only leash. You feel their stares, hear the pause in their chatter, waiting for you to fix what you didn't break. The bells keep ringing, tying you to this role, where you're both invisible and indispensable. As you jest, you wonder how long you can carry a king's mood before it crushes you, knowing the next frown could be your last curtain call. You're the jester bells jingling like shackles as you shuffle through the castle's torchlit corridors, the air heavy with wax and whispered plots. You live among kings, but you're no freer than a caged bird. Once the court dubs, you fool, that's it, no promotion, no escape, no I'd rather try blacksmithing. Your life's a stage, you can't leave a role that consumes you until your last breath. The hall's a snake pit, and you're trapped in its coils, your garish tunic scratching like a reminder. This isn't a job, it's an identity, and it's forever. You're not a man with dreams, you're a jingle with a pulse doomed to jest until your knees give out or the court tires of you. There's no retirement, no cosy cottage waiting. You age, your voice cracks, your back aches like a traitor, but you're still the fool, just slower, sadder, with fewer teeth. Try to leave good luck. You've no trade, no land, no allies beyond the castle's walls. Wander into a village and you're not a witty performer. You're a madman in bells babbling about dukes and dodging rotten turnips. Even if you slip away, the court might drag you back some lord whining. "Bring the old fool!" He made us laugh. The bells chime a cruel chain tying you to this life. You eat scraps, sleep in a damp nook, and perform on command because the alternative's starvation or a noose. You feel the court's eyes, hear the clink of goblets, pause for your next quip. You juggle jest, mock a lord's bad poetry, all while your heart begs for freedom. The torches cast your shadow, a twisted fool's outline, as you dance through their egos. Your brilliant may be sharper than the king's counsel, but it's buried under pratfalls and puns. The court's a trap and you're its captive, laughing at your own pain to keep them amused. The bells keep ringing, a mocking reminder you're not here to live but to entertain. As you slip to your straw pallet, the hall's laughter fading. You wonder if you'll ever be more than a fool, or if the bells will jingle over your grave. You're the jester bells, jingling like a sly warning as you weave through the great hall, the air thick with wine and whispered schemes. In a court where everyone nobles, bishops, knights, speaks in flattery or lies, you've got a strange power you can tell the truth. Not plain mind you that'd get your head on a spike, but wrapped in riddles and jests sharp enough to sting, but soft enough to slip past the king's temper. The torches flicker, casting your shadow like a fool's dance, and you toss a quip about the baron's generous taxes veiled as a tale of a greedy goose. The court roars, but some squirm knowing you've held a mirror to their sins. In this snake pit, you're the only one who can call the emperor naked so long as you do it with a backflip and a jingle. It's a dangerous gift. You mock a lord's embezzling with a pun about stray sheep or mimic the duchess' too close bishop friend, and the laughter's your shield until it isn't. The line's razor-thin one, joke too bold, one truth too raw, and the king's chuckle turns to a glare. Monday he loves your jab at his rival's war blunder. Tuesday it's treason because the mood's sour. You're the court's conscience, dressed in bells, shining a flickering light on their hypocrisy. The air's heavy with intrigue goblets clinking as nobles pretend it's all a game. But they watch you, some with quiet awe, others with cold hate, because a fool who sees too much is a threat. The bells chime, tying you to this deadly dance, where wit is your blade and timing your armour. You feel their stares, hear the hall hush for your next line. You spin a riddle, pray it lands soft and keep smiling, because a jester's truth is a tightrope over a pit of vipers. The court's a maze of egos, and you're the one navigating it, your jests cutting deeper than swords. But every laugh's a gamble, every truth a risk. As you jest, you wonder, will this quip be your triumph or your noose? The bells keep ringing, a reminder you're the court's truth-teller, but only as long as they're laughing. One misstep and the snake pit bites back. You're the jester, your bells now silent, lying on a straw pallet in a damp castle nook, the air cold with mildew and fading laughter. You've spent your life filling great halls with jests, making kings forget their wars and lords drop their pride. But when your time comes, no one's there. Your death is as quiet as your life was loud, a flicker snuffed out in a corner, unnoticed, unmourned. The court's a snake pit, and you are its dancing fool, but snakes don't grieve their toys. No parade, no eulogy, no stone carved with your cleverest quip. You're not a knight or bard to be sung of. You're just gone, your bells left to rust in a drawer, maybe found by the next fool who won't ask your name. You never married, never had heirs, never owned a scrap of land. Your legacy's the laughter you sparked fleeting as the torchlight that once lit your pranks. The cook might mutter years later, "Remember that fool who danced like a goat?" But that's it. The court moves on, a new jester's bells already jingling before your palate's cold. You are a sound, a colour, a flicker of fun replaceable as a cracked goblet. The air's still. The castle's pulse thrums on without you, and your grave, if you get one, might lie outside the churchyard, too full of jokes for holy ground. The bells, your lifelong chains, are silent now, but their weight lingers, a reminder you lived for their joy but died alone. You feel the chill creep in, hear the distant echo of feasts you'll never jest at again. The court's laughter fades, a cruel curtain call for a life spent dodging their barbs. You were the fool, the court's mirror reflecting their flaws with a smile, but mirrors don't leave marks. The snake pit forgets its dancers, and as your breath slows you wonder if anyone ever saw the man behind the bells. The world spins on the hall, fills with new jests, and you slip away a shadow in a world of light. The bells don't jingle anymore, but their silence speaks louder than any quip, whispering of a life that burned bright for others, only to fade alone. You're the jester bells, jingling like a faint echo of your life's purpose, standing in the torchlit hall where nobles feast and scheme. To them you're comic relief, a splash of colour in their grim world of war and politics. But look closer, and you're more a mirror held up to their fragile power, reflecting truths they'd rather bury. The air's thick with mead and malice, and your quips sharp as a blade cut through their masks. You mock the king's folly with a pun, mimic a lord's greed with a smirk, and the court laughs, but it squirms too because your jests hide slivers of reality. In this snake pit, you're not just a fool, you're a warning, a symbol of what they fear being exposed, being human, being ridiculous. Your bells chime a cruel chain, but they give you a strange power. You're lowborn, yet you mock kings. Powerless, yet you speak truths that could topple thrones. Every jest is a jab at their hypocrisy, every pratfall a nod to their flaws. The torches flicker, casting your shadow a twisted fool's dance, and the nobles laugh, pretending it's just a game. But they know you see them, their schemes, their fears. You're the court's conscience, dressed in rags and bells, a reminder that power's fragile when a fool can make it flinch. The hall's a maze of egos, and you navigate it your wits sharper than their swords, your laughter deadlier than their decrees. Yet the joke's on you. You sacrifice dignity, freedom, even your name for their fleeting chuckles. Your genius, poetry, satire, insight is cloaked in absurdity, dismissed as foolishness. You feel their stares, hear the clink of goblets, pause for your next quip. The bells keep ringing, tying you to this role where you're both vital and invisible. As you jest, you wonder, do they see the man behind the fool or just the costume? The court forgets, but history doesn't. Centuries later, your shadow lingers not as a clown, but as a haunting truth. The one who made kings laugh was the one they feared most. You fade into the night bells silent, leaving a legacy whispered in the echoes of a court that needed you more than it knew. Picture yourself in 6th century BC Athens, the air buzzing with spring's warmth, the scent of crushed grapes and livestock heavy under a blazing sun. You're not at a quiet playhouse, but at the city Dionysia, a wild festival honouring Dionysus, god of wine, madness and performance. This isn't theatre as you know it. No curtains, no tickets, just a chaotic swirl of chants, sacrifices and wine-soaked revelry. You're swept into the crowd, your sandals sticking to the earth, as a chorus of 50 men, faces painted, voices rising like a storm, performs a dithyramb, a frenzied hymn that's half prayer, half trance. It's not acting, it's possession, a blur of divine energy that makes your skin prickle. Welcome to the birth of theatre, where the stage is a sacred altar and the audience is half drunk on gods and glee. You didn't come here for a show. You came to worship, but something magical's brewing. The chorus moves in rhythm, their masks glinting like otherworldly eyes, chanting tales of Dionysus's triumphs. You feel the pulse of drums, hear the bleat of goats offered to the gods. Sorry, no vegan options here. Then a man named Thespis steps out alone, claiming to be someone else, a hero. A god, not just a chanter. The crowd gasps like he's broken the world's rules, or cracked open a portal. This, you realise, is the first act of the moment theatre sparks into being. It's blasphemy or wizardry, and you're hooked. The air's thick with awe and wine fumes, the sun beating down like it's cheering. This isn't a tidy origin story. No playwrights, no scripts, just raw human need to connect with something bigger. You're in a city where art and faith are the same, where telling stories is a ritual as vital as planting crops. The stage, a dusty slope, feels alive, a space where mortals touch myths. You sway with the crowd, your voice joining theirs, and wonder, what's this madness doing to us? The masks, the chants, the wine. It's not just a party. It's a doorway to meaning, a way to face the gods and laugh at mortality. As the chorus fades, you feel the earth beneath you hum, ready for the next act in this divine, messy drama. You're back in Athens, the Dionysian festival's echo still ringing. But now it's the 5th century BCE and theatre's growing up. The wild chants have hardened into something structured tragedy, or goat song a name that's either about sacrificed goats or the bleating prize for the best show. You're perched on a stone seat in the Theatre of Dionysus, a hillside carved to hold thousands, the air sharp with olive trees and anticipation. The stage below isn't just a patch of dirt anymore, it's a mirror reflecting your city's fears and glories. You watch actors masked and larger than life weave tales of fate, betrayal, and gods who treat mortals like chess pieces. It's not just a play, it's a reckoning, and you're part of it, heart pounding like a war drum. The masks are everything. You see them huge carved faces with twisted mouths for grief, wide eyes for terror, delicate curves for queens. They're not subtle, they're loud, so even the back row feels the sorrow. Actors all male swap them to play gods' heroes or women, their voices booming without mics cutting through the open air. You hear the strain, the precision, as they project every word, their bodies bending in anguish or defiance. It's not acting like today's understated nods, it's a full-body cry, a dance with the divine. The stage is a sacred space, and these masks transform men into myths, their breath, the only human thing left. You shiver the sun warm, but the story's cold as Oedipus faces his doom. Playwrights like Aeschylus and Sophocles have turned Dionysian chaos into art, adding dialogue, a second actor, then a third, building conflict into poetry. You're not just watching, you're judging part of a civic ritual where theatre's as vital as voting. The masks hide faces but bare souls, showing Athens its hubris and heartbreak. The air's thick with dust and awe, the crowd hushed as the tragedy unfolds. You feel the weight of their fates, wonder what your own mask would show. The stage holds you a portal to truth, and as the actors bow, you know this isn't just a show. It's a mirror for humanity reflecting what you dare not say, ready for the next tale to unfold under the Mediterranean sky. You're seated in the Theatre of Dionysus, Athens, sprawling below under a blazing Mediterranean sun, the air humming, with olive-scented dust and quiet awe. It's the 5th century BCE, and the tragedy unfolding isn't just a story, it's a mirror reflecting your city's soul. The masked actors, their voices echoing off the hillside, weave tales of pride, loss, and gods who toy with mortals. You feel the weight of their words, each line a jab at Athens' triumphs and flaws. This isn't just entertainment. It's a ritual, a civic confession where the stage holds a truth sharper than any spear. You're not just watching, you're part of it, your heart thumping like a festival drum. The masks, oversized and stark, amplify every emotion. Sorrow's twisted mouth, fear's wide eyes making the back row weep as much as the front. They turn actors into myths, their gestures grand, their voices a bridge between human and divine. You see your own fears in Oedipus's blindness, your own hubris in Creon's fall. The air's thick with tension, the crowd hushed as the play strips Athens bare, its wars, its pride, its fragile democracy. Theatre's no escape here. It's a reckoning, a sacred space where you face what you'd rather ignore. You laugh at the chorus's dry quips, but it's nervous laughter like joking at a funeral. The stage is alive, a portal where mortals grapple with eternity. As the play ends, the actors bow, masks glinting like divine winks. You stand with the crowd, your sandals gritty, feeling raw like you've shed a skin. This wasn't just a show, it was Athens looking at itself, flaws and all, under Dionysus' gaze. The sun dips, casting long shadows, and you wonder what's your role in this grand drama. The stage taught you resilience, the masks showed you truth's many faces. You leave the city's pulse in your veins, ready for life's next act. Theatre's legacy lingers not in stone, but in the human need to tell stories, to laugh, to cry, to face the gods and keep going. The masks fade, but the mirror remains, reflecting humanity's stubborn heart, ready for the next tale to unfold across time. Picture yourself in ancient Macedon, the air sharp with pine and dust, the clang of bronze swords echoing across rugged hills. You're not a bystander, you're Cinane, daughter of King Philip II, born into a world where women are meant to weave and wed, not wield blades. But your father, the warlord who forged an empire, saw fire in you, not just a dowry. Forget fairy tales of princesses, you're raised like a wolf cub, trained to fight, not flirt. The training ground's your cradle, the scent of sweat and leather your perfume. You grip a spear at an age when most girls clutch dolls, your muscles aching like a badge of defiance. This is no game, Macedon's a snake pit of ambition, and you're learning to bite back. You're barely taller than a shield when Philip hands you a sword, his eyes glinting, like he's betting on you to outshine his sons. You spar with boys, your braid whipping as you dodge and thrust, their taunts fading when you pin them in the dirt. The sun burns your shoulders, the ground's hard as the court's whispers about a girl who fights like a man. You don't care. You learn strategy, rhetoric, how to lead men who'd rather follow a mule than a woman. Philip's court is a forge, and you're hammered into something sharp, not soft. The air's thick with ambition and danger, the clink of armour a lullaby for a princess who dreams of battle, not ballads. This isn't Hollywood's ancient world, all togas and glory. It's gritty, your hands blister, your knees scar, and the nobles sneer, calling you unnatural. But you feel alive, your heart pounding like war drums as you muster horse and blade. You're not just Philip's daughter. You're his weapon, a spark in a dynasty that burns bright and cruel. The fire in you grows a defiance that'll singe the empire's edges. As you wipe sweat from your brow, you hear the distant roar of battles you'll one day lead. Macedon's a snake pit, and you're no prey, you're a predator raised to strike. The Empire's watching, and you're ready to show them a woman can carve her own legend one bloody step at a time. You're Cynaean standing on a windswept Illyrian plain, the air raw with blood and frost, your spear heavy but steady. Macedon's empire hums behind you, but here you're no princess, you're a warrior leading men into battle against tribes who'd sooner spit than kneel. The ground's churned to mud, the clash of bronze and screams a brutal symphony. You're not here for glory. You're here to win, to prove a woman can break bones as well as any man. Your braids dusted with grit, your armour dented, but your eyes burn like the fire Philip kindled in you. This is your stage, the snake pit of war, and you're dancing through it, blade in hand. Your men grizzled Macedonians follow you not because you're Philip's daughter, but because you've earned it. You led them through Illyria's hills, outsmarting ambushes with a strategist's mind and a wolf's instinct. You charge where they hesitate, your spear finding its mark, your voice cutting through the chaos like a whip. The enemy falters, their war cries fading as you carve a path to victory. The air's thick with dust and death, the clink of shields, a grim applause. You're not just fighting, you're rewriting what a woman can be, each thrust a defiance of the court's sneers. No one's laughing now Macedon's enemies learn your name, and it's not princess. You marry strategically too, tying your blood to power first to a noble, then to cement alliances. Your husband's barely a footnote. You're the one wielding influence, your victory's louder than any dowry. The Empire's a snake pit, and you're no bystander. You're a player, your triumphs in Illyria, a warning to those who dismiss you. The sun sets on the battlefield, painting the mud red, and you stand tall, your men cheering their loyalty, hard won. You feel the weight of your spear, the sting of cuts, and know this is your truth, not a crown, but a fight. As you turn toward Macedon, the fire in you flares, ready to burn brighter. The Empire's watching, and you're not done. You're forging a legacy that'll echo beyond the graves of kings one battle at a time. You're Cynan standing in a Macedonian training yard, the air sharp with dust and the clink of bronze. Your daughter Eurydice, barely a teen, grips a spear, her braid swinging as she spars under your hawk-like gaze. Macedon's empire teeters after Alexander's death, a snake pit of scheming generals and fragile thrones. But you're not raising a princess to simper, you're forging a queen to rule. The sun burns the grounds hard as the court whispers about your ambition, but you don't flinch. You've fought battles, broken norms, and now you're pouring that fire into Eurydice, shaping her into a blade to carve her own path. This isn't parenting, it's strategy, a defiance of a world that wants women quiet. You drill her like Philip drilled you, swordplay, horsemanship, rhetoric to sway armies. She's got your grit, her eyes fierce as she parries, her voice steady, reciting war tactics. You teach her politics, the kind that cuts deeper than steel, who to trust no one, how to spot a plot always. The court sneers, calling you mad for raising a girl like a general, but you know the Empire's crumbling its throne, a prize for the bold. You plan to wed her to Aridaeus, Alexander's half-brother, a king in name but weak in mind. With Eurydice as his queen, and you as her guide, you'll hold the reins of Macedon. The air's thick with sweat, and scheming the clank of shields a lullaby for your dreams. This isn't a fairy tale of gowns and crowns. Macedon's a brutal game, and you're teaching Eurydice to win. Her hands blister, her shoulders ache, but she doesn't whine. She's your daughter, fire in her veins. You feel the weight of every stare, hear the nobles' murmurs about unnatural women. Let them talk. You're building a legacy, a dynasty of defiance. The training yard's your forge, and Eurydice is your masterpiece, ready to burn through the Empire's chains. As she lands a strike, you smile, knowing she's not just your heir, she's your rebellion. The snake pit waits, but you're arming her to strike first. A queen who'll make history tremble one fearless step at a time. You're Cynaen astride a warhorse, the air heavy with salt and dust as you lead Eurydice toward Asia. Minor Macedon's fractured empire at your back. Alexander's gone, leaving a throne contested by generals who'd rather brawl than bow. You're not here for peace. You're making a move to crown your daughter queen. Eurydice, regale and fierce, is set to wed Aridaeus, the weak-minded heir. If she's his bride, you'll be the power behind her steering Macedon through its chaos. The road's rough, the sun relentless, and your armour chafes like the court's sneers, but your fire burns bright. This is no diplomatic jaunt. It's a gambit to reshape an empire, and you're playing it like a snake pit's master. You've planned every step. Eurydice's trained her bloodlines royal, and soldiers respect you, the warrior who bested Illyrians. You aim to tie your daughter to the throne, not as a pawn, but a queen who'll rule with your steel. The empire's splintering generals like Perdiccas hoarding power, but you see a path through the thorns. Aridaeus is a puppet. Eurydice, your blade, will cut the strings. The air's thick with tension, the clop of her hooves a war drum for your ambition. You know the risks. Men don't take kindly to women who move like kings, but you've never played safe. Macedon's a snake pit, and you're ready to strike your daughter your venom. You feel the weight of every mile, hear the whispers of betrayal in the wind. The court's watching, generals plotting, but you push on Eurydice at your side, her eyes as fierce as yours. This isn't a mother's dream, it's a warrior's strategy, a defiance of a world that buries women's names. You're not just fighting for power, you're fighting to save Macedon from itself, to keep its fire alive. The road stretches perilous and proud, and you ride with the grit of a woman who's faced swords and won. As you near your goal, you know this move could crown Eurydice or kill you both. The snake pit hisses, but your fire's ready to burn through one bold step at a time. You're Cynaen on a dusty road in Asia Minor, the air thick with betrayal and the tang of salt. Your daughter Eurydice rides beside you, her eyes sharp, bound for a marriage to Aridaeus that could crown her queen. Macedon's empire is a snake pit splintering under greedy generals, and you're here to secure your legacy, a woman wielding power in a man's game. Your armour's heavy, your heart fiercer, but the road feels wrong, too quiet, the shadows too long. You sense the trap, but your fire, that defiant spark Philip kindled, drives you forward. This isn't a journey. It's a battlefield, and you're ready to fight even if the Empire's hissing at your heels. Suddenly hooves thunder. Alcetus, Perdiccas' brother, blocks your path with armed men. The air crackles, your pulse a war drum. You're unarmed but unbowed, standing tall like the warrior who crushed Illyrians. You demand to see the king, your voice cutting through their steel. Or maybe you rally the soldiers, calling on their loyalty to Philip's blood. But the order's already given. A blade flashes swift and cold, and you fall not in battle's glory, but in a coward's ambush. The ground's hard, the sky cruelly clear, and your fire flickers as blood pools. You're Cynaen, daughter of a king, leader of armies, betrayed not for failure, but for daring too much. The snake pit bites, and your defiance costs you everything. Yet your death sparks a blaze. The soldiers Macedonians who cheered your victories recoil at the sacrilege killing Philip's daughter. A war hero is blasphemy. Their outrage roars a tide even Perdiccas can't stem. He backtracks, allowing Eurydice to wed Aridaeus, but the cost is steep. You lie still, the air heavy with dust and grief, your dream handed to your daughter. Macedon's lost a mind sharper than its swords, a woman who fought like a king. The snake pit thinks it's won, but your fire burns in Eurydice, a legacy that'll singe the Empire's edges. As the world fades, you know you didn't just fight, you lit a torch. No blade can snuff, and the Empire will feel its heat. Your Eurydice no longer Ada, standing in Macedon's heart, the air thick with incense and ambition. Your mother Cynaen is dead, assassinated for her bold dream, but a fire rages in you. You've married Aridaeus, Alexander's half-brother, a king in name. His mind frail, but you're no consort. You're a queen, renamed Eurydice to echo. Argad queen's a declaration carved in defiance. The Empire's a snake pit, fracturing under generals' greed, and you step into the chaos armour, gleaming your voice a blade. The court whispers shocked at a woman who rules, but you're Cynaen's daughter, trained to lead, not follow, ready to burn through their doubts. You don't sit meekly beside Aridaeus, you act. You address the army-grizzled veterans of Alexander's wars in full military dress, your words sharp as the spears you once trained with. You promise order, Macedonian pride, a return to glory, and they listen, stirred by your mother's echo in your stance. The air's heavy with sweat and loyalty, the clink of armour a chorus for your eyes. You're not a puppet, you're a force challenging regents like Perdiccas with every speech. The generals scowl unused to a queen who speaks like a king, but you've got Philip's blood, Sinane's grit, and a fire that won't bend. The snake pit hisses, but you're ready to strike. This isn't a fairy tale crown, it's a battlefield, and you're fighting for more than power. You're fighting for Sinane's dream, for a Macedon that doesn't eat itself alive. You issue orders, rally troops, your every move, a defiance of a world that buries women's names. The court's a maze of egos, and you navigate it. Your mother's lessons, your map. You feel their stares, hear the hush, as you speak your armour glinting like a dare. The empire's crumbling, but you stand tall, a queen who chooses herself. As you face the soldiers, you know this is your moment, your mother's torch in your hands. The snake pit waits, but you're no prey, you're a predator, ready to forge a legacy that'll echo beyond the graves of kings, one bold word at a time. You're Eurydice, queen of Macedon, standing tall in military garb, the air thick with dust and the clink of restless swords. The empire's fracturing Alexander's legacy, a snake pit of warring generals, but you're no bystander. You're Sinane's daughter, fire in your veins, ready to seize the reins beside your husband Aridaeus. You don't whisper in shadows. You stride into the fray, issuing decrees in your own name, your voice a blade cutting through the court's murmurs. The sun glints off your armour. The ground hard as the generals glares, but you challenge them. Polyperchon, the new regent, especially demanding loyalty to the throne you're shaping. This isn't a game. It's a war for Macedon's soul, and you're playing to win. You rally the army veterans who followed Alexander to the world's edge, speaking with your mother's fire. You call for unity, Macedonian strength, and they cheer, stirred by a queen who stands like a king. The air hums with tension, the clank of shields a grim applause. You write letters bold as blood, defying Polyperchon's grip on the capital. You're not just a figurehead, you're a force, your every move, a defiance of a world that expects women to kneel. The generals scowl unnerved by your audacity, but you've got soldiers' respect, Philip's blood, and a will that burns brighter than their schemes. The snake pit hisses, but you're weaving through it, your mother's lessons, your shield. This isn't a fairy tale of crowns and curtsies. Macedon's a brutal chessboard, and you're a queen making knight's moves. You feel the weight of every word, hear the court's whispers of unnatural ambition. Let them talk. You're fighting for Sinane's dream, for an empire that doesn't devour itself. The torches flicker, casting your shadow a warrior's silhouette. As you face the army, your voice steady despite the odds. You know the risks, one misstep and the snake pit bites. But you push on your fire, unyielding, a legacy of defiance in every decree. As you stand before the troops, you sense the empire teetering, but you're not backing down. You're Eurydice, ready to carve your name into history, one fearless act at a time. You're Eurydice, queen of Macedon, armour glinting under a merciless sun, the air heavy with betrayal and the clash of steel. The empire's a snake pit, splintering in the wars of Alexander's successors, and you're at its heart, defying regents like Polyperchon with your mother's fire. You've rallied armies, issued decrees, stood before soldiers like a king, but now the ground shifts beneath you. Olympias, Alexander's mother, returns from exile, her eyes cold as a viper's, her ambition a blade aimed at your throne. The court's a maze of shifting loyalties, and you march to confront her Aridaeus, at your side, your heart a war drum. This isn't politics, it's survival, and you're fighting with every spark Sinan gave you. You face Olympia's forces, your troops loyal, but wavering under her mythic name. The air crackles, the clink of spears a grim prelude. You stand tall, calling on your soldiers' pride, but betrayal bites your men, awed by Olympia's legacy, abandon you. You're captured, Aridaeus, trembling beside you. The crown you fought for ripped away. The snake pit closes in, and Olympias doesn't offer mercy. You're imprisoned, the air dank with despair, and forced to end your life, not in battle's blaze, but in a coward's cage. Aridaeus falls soon after, murdered to silence your line. The ground's cold, the world fading, and your fire flickers, snuffed by a world that fears women who rule. Your death isn't just an end. It's a warning etched in blood for any who dare claim a king's power. Yet your defiance lingers. Soldiers whisper your name, historians scribble your story, a flash of rebellion in a darkening empire. The air's still, a snake pit smug, but you and Sinan left scars. Macedon felt your fire, and it burned bright. You weren't a pawn. You were a queen who chose herself like your mother before you. The court forgets, but legends don't. Your shadow haunts the empire, a reminder that women can shake thrones. As your breath fades, you know you didn't just fight, you lit a torch that'll glow in the margins of history, a legacy of courage no blade can erase, ready to spark again in another defiant heart.